Hello everyone and welcome to another one of my painting tutorials. In this episode I'll be doing the Slaanesh Keeper of Secrets. So here we've got the paint list for those who don't have access to these colours and the closest representation of the GW colours if you've only got those available. So you can see I've sprayed the model black. I've kept it in sub-assemblies, so obviously you can see the head is not on it here and the back sort of flowy cloak robes and the back piece here, as you can see, I've just popped out. I've kept that so that I can keep that available to airbrush, get all the robe bit done separately, and also get in behind and get some nice blends on the legs. So here we've got the flowy cloak bit separate. This on the model it is a bit of a nightmare to paint around, so I've kept that bit separate for that reason. And obviously the head we've kept separate because I want to be able to access the hair a bit more easily with the painting, and then the back of the sort of top bit of the robe, I want to airbrush that as well. I've kept the little jewellery pieces that hang off of her waist separate as well. They can just be painted obviously gold and with the jewels, and then just stuck on the robes afterwards. It's a great sculpt, this. I mean, you can see all the sort of definition where the black spray is kind of shiny under the light here. Really enjoyed this model, so hopefully you guys can follow along and get sort of similar results. So I'm going to start out by just popping off the little loincloth robe piece. I'm going to keep a little bit of the blue tack in place, just because when I go to put the robe back on, I can peel that little bit of blue tack off, and there's a nice bit of plastic underneath for the good surface contact. So I'm going to start out by spraying the model with just some Tamiya white through the airbrush. I would have used flat white, but I didn't have it available. But you can use any just smooth white for this. You could do it with a spray can, but where the weather's been so hit and miss, I just decided to get some white down through the airbrush. This is just so that when we put the flesh colours and the pinks and purples down and the blues on the robes, they're going to be really vibrant over a nice white base coat. You probably see that they're a little bit powdery and messy going through the airbrush here. I'm not taking a lot of care here with sort of the actual the consistency. I'm just getting the colours down, and just so that I can see where I want the brightest points. And obviously I do the same with the head as well. I do a bit on the hair because the hair will obviously have the blue go on it for later on, but mainly we want to focus on the skin on the face. And then obviously the little bit of sort of our headdress bit that goes behind our head from the top of the robe, and then the robe itself. So with the robe, I try and put a bit more white on the areas that are going to have white after the blue, just so that there's a bit more sort of a pre-shade done there, or pre-highlight with a lot of white showing through. It's obviously quite hot in here at the moment, so getting the airbrush layers down, they dry so quickly. I'm able to just hold it straight away at the top and flip it around. I don't really have to wait for anything there. It's literally dry as it's hitting the model. I'm sure people across the UK at the moment will sort of probably be in a similar boat with their painting. It's hot. So first colours going down on the model then. Some thin down Kislev flash through the airbrush. Obviously if you don't have access to an airbrush, this can all be done like brush layered. It will just take a lot more time, especially with the bigger sort of parts of the leg blends and the robes. It just gives you that sort of ease of access where you can just quickly get the bases down, especially when you're doing a whole army, which in this case I have done. It's just load up the airbrush with a flesh colour and get it done across the entire army in one go, and then move on to the next colour. It's great for speed painting, well, effectively speed painting an army. Obviously don't forget to do the tail and the back piece there. So you see here I hit a lot of the model with this flesh colour because most of the model does have the flesh as the base colour. So then I'm using some Wraithbone or sort of bone white if you've got it. This is just to, it's really thin, it's just to put sort of the top areas of the muscles and the flesh, so that when we get a wash over it later on, we'll get a bit more gradient definition between the Kislev flesh and the highlighted areas. You could use a brighter flesh colour here, but just the thin down bone keeps the colour of the flesh coming through anyway, so it's just a nice one to sort of pre-highlight the skin with before we go on to washes later on. Obviously I sped up the video here because you don't want to just see me painting flesh for days on the model. You want to see, you know, the stages a bit quicker. So and then obviously get the horns on the model as well with a bit more of the bone white. So we're going to move on to our first sort of real colour on the model, which will be Vallejo Model Colour Sunset Red. I mix this in the airbrush with just water, not any thinner. It seems to react weirdly with Tamiya thinner, so I do this with a lot of the model colour range. I just mix them with water. It sort of goes like a weird silly putty. You can see here I've diluted it quite a lot, and it's going on very, very thinly. You don't want to overcook this colour because it's you know, it's a very fuchsia-y sort of magenta, pinky red. There isn't really a great colour match in the GW range for this one, unfortunately. Screamer Pink will probably do. It just doesn't have the vibrancy that this colour has, especially when you put it over a thin base, you know, bright thin base coat like this bone and Kislev flesh mix. So we're going to sort of put this towards the extremities of the joints, so the bottoms towards the legs and the ankles, and then the sort of the ends of the hands. Actually, I don't do our hands; it's just the claws here. I keep the hands more flesh coloured, and then obviously later on we'll detail them a bit. But you can see how thin it is here because it's not really covering particularly well. But that's kind of what we want with this, so you can go back and do multiple passes just to slowly build it up. Because if you do it too much too quickly, it's going to go a bit too pink. Next up, we're going to go in with some Game Air Hexed Lichen. This will be more as a shadow towards the sort of very bottom, the legs and the ends of the claw parts. Again, very thin. Build this up really slowly. You want to get a really nice transition from the feet right up to the top of the thigh. So I didn't paint these like stockings as actual sort of stockings. I painted them as if they were almost see-through, and the colour of the keeper's legs were actually this colour. And then you can see I'm getting the ends of the hands. It's a bit of an awkward model to move around if you've got it built. The arms are quite wide once it's set up. So we're going to move on and base coat all of the metal areas that will be gold with Games Workshop Balthasar gold. Love this as a nice gold rich base colour to use, especially when we get a bit of purple wash on it later on. You get a great colour. So you can see how I'm just sort of picking out where the metal pieces will be. Painted this all with a I want to say a Windsor. It wasn't a Windsor brush for this. It was a Da Vinci Raphael. Let me just double check. Yeah, so it was a Raphael size 1. The code for the brush is an 8404. I got put onto these recently from watching some YouTube videos and just having a little look around online and wanted to try something a bit different. There was a bit of a brush shortage over here. They were a bit hard to get hold of online, so my sort of normal Windsor stock was a bit depleted, so I just sort of tried out, and it's a really nice brush. It's a bit longer than a normal Windsor, and the size is more like a Windsor 2, but this is a size 1 in this brand. Holds a nice point. It's quite soft. Still probably prefer the Windsor. I'm not really sure. Jury's still out on this one, but I'm going to keep testing them out and see how they go. But did the whole model with this brush and the airbrush, so it's, you know, it's very versatile. So here you can see all the gold is now in place, and I've made a mix and also turned the brightness on the camera down a little bit because the white sort of was reflecting quite a bit in the previous bit. So this wash is going to go over all the skin and all the gold, and later on we'll do a sort of similar mix over silver as well. But this little bit of soft tone in it just adds the little bit of warmth and brown to it to sort of push the shadows in the flesh a little bit. But obviously the purple Druchii violet shade in here is really what we want, because it's going to sort of darken down the gold, but purple over gold looks really nice. You get a really nice sort of soft, almost like, I guess, a regal sort of gold. It's quite nice. You sort of have to see it to sort of see, you know, know what I'm sort of going for. And then we're going to go, obviously this is pretty much over the entire model, so I've mixed up quite a nice batch of this to do the whole army. You can see I'm just sort of going back and forth, just sort of you know, not letting it pull too harshly. But then here you can see the wash is dried across the whole model. So we're going to move away from the skin and metals now and do the base coating on the robes. So I'm using Sotek green, which is actually a really nice blue. You can sort of get the feeling there is some green in there. There is a bit of a green sort of hue to it, but it's a solid blue. It's great for this, more of a turquoise. So we're going to go ahead and base coat the robes. So obviously get the main big robe and also the little loincloth piece as well. So we're going to go ahead and place down the first highlight on the robes. You can see here I'm actually having a little bit of difficulty with the airbrush. It's got a sort of slight blockage in it at the moment. It's not flowing out as nice as I'd like it to. So you can see I keep taking it away from the model and spraying it onto my glove just to make sure that there's a nice flow there. There could be a small tiny bit of paint or something, just, you know, that's not quite thin enough to go through, blocking it. So I just put the pressure up a little bit and then spray through just to clear it out, and it seems to be going on quite nicely now. Be careful obviously not to spray onto the tail here. If you do get any on, we can just go and, you know, fix that later on with a little bit of purple or the flesh colour. A lot of horizontal passes backwards and forwards, just to keep the shadows in the folds, let the angle of the model help you know, hide those areas just so you can hit the raised surfaces. So you can see here we've started to get some sort of shadow build up as well. I didn't do too much on the inside of the robe because obviously you want that a bit darker because there wouldn't be a lot of light in there. And obviously remember to hit the little head piece that goes behind her as well. And get some highlights down on the little loincloth piece itself. So next up we're going in with pretty much pure white here. There might be a little bit of Sotek green still in there, but it's almost pure white. And again, there's a bit of a blockage there, so you can see I've taken it away from the screen and just sprayed it onto my hand. And I've gone back in again, and it's flowing nicely. Just again, you want to hit the folds. A lot of horizontal motions here, so you can just hit the you know, the tops of the folds and leave the recesses nice and dark. This is Tamiya white through the airbrush, but any nice smooth white will do nicely, like a white ink or I think it's white scar air should be quite nice for this as well. This white almost has kind of a satiny finish as well, so there's a little bit of shine there. But once the robe's completely done and all the shades are down, like you can see here, there's some really nice folds in the robe that just lend themselves beautifully to airbrushing. Actually go and do a really nice satin varnish over this before I fix it to the model. This just gives it an even finish all over, where the paints might not be quite the same level of finish, and obviously when you're handling the model on the table, it gives you a little bit of resistance there and a bit of protection. So next up we're going to use some black. I've just used model colour black here, or scale black, or any nice, just decent black here will do. Just go in and paint all of the little, I guess they're little straps. You could also do the little sort of hand cover sort of pieces with this as well on her wrists, but I just kept them gold, even though they're probably not an actual metal. They're more of a fabric-y sort of finish. I just thought, well, they could just be like nice little hand protectors, so I'll leave them as metal. But again, move around the model here and just pick out all the little straps, and obviously take your time here. You don't want to have to go back and fix anything here where possible. So I mean, after these black little bits are done, you could also go and highlight them with a bit of grey. You can see here I've just left them flat black, because obviously when we go later and put the little silver rivets in place, the black just contrasts nicely against the skin, so unless you want the extra highlight in there, this will be fine like this. And then we're going to go in with some silver. This is just Vallejo Game Air silver, really smooth, great for highlighting small edges like these. Stormhost silver GW will work nicely, or if you've got some of the older silvers like Mithril silver or something, that would also work nicely. You could lightly dry brush these metals, but I think just picking out the edges and the corners is just a lot cleaner on a model like this. And obviously you don't want to accidentally dry brush any of the skin with the silver, so just take your time again like you did with the black and work around the model and pick out all the raised gold areas. And like obviously on her like bodice bit here we can pick out the little swirls and stuff as well. And there's a lot of ridges here on her big claws, so obviously work around these both sides, both arms, and just pick out all the sort of folds in the metal. And obviously she's got some quite cool little decorations on these as well, which you can pick out. And don't forget the feet as well. You can see here I've come back and highlighted all the bits on the face, and then I've also put silver onto all the little rivets on the black pieces of like the straps and stuff. And I did the same on the back of the headpiece here as well. You can see here I painted the sword all silver as well, and also picked out all the little metal sort of rivet pieces on her black straps across her body. And then carefully here I'm going to go in and paint the hair piece with Sotek green. And I've painted the little grip on the sword here with just a bit of Mephiston red, just to add a slightly different colour to the model. Could have done any sort of brown or purple or gold or any leather or something in here, but I just went with a bit of red. And I'm going to wash that later on with the sword when we do the purple, so it will get a bit of definition and it will tint more towards the purple spectrum anyway. And I'm going to take some of the P3 Battlefield Brown, paint all the claws and teeth on the model. Rhinox Hide, I believe, is a pretty good sort of replacement for this Battlefield Brown if you don't have it. I've just used this for years now as my base coat for claws and bone. It's a great cover to build on, colour, sorry, to build on top of. She's got some quite hard to reach fingers, like hidden underneath the sword and stuff, obviously, so you have to flip the model around and go in from various different angles to get in here. Also notice on the hand without the sword, you've got like big metal claws on the first couple of fingers. Obviously we got those in the previous stage with the silver, and then they can be washed purple later on as well. So we're going to do the big sort of thumb claw on each of the big hands as well in this Battlefield Brown. And then don't forget her teeth as well. They're kind of hard to get into here. I've got this model at quite a weird angle. It's quite hard to see where I'm actually painting here. Probably an easy one to do off cam, to be honest there. So we're going to wash the sword and the handle and then the little claws on her metal hand as well, the little fingers. Just with some Druchii Violet. This is pretty much neat out of the pot here. I'm just moving it around a lot so it doesn't settle too hard in any areas, but you kind of want it to sit on the top and either fold of the blade to give them a bit of definition. Obviously we'll come back in afterwards with some silver and fix any bits that are, you know, too much purple on, but you want to take the shine off the blade, so that when we highlight it we can put the shine back where we want it to be. Which is what I do with most of my metals, is wash them back so they lose their natural sort of pigment shine, and then replace that with highlights. So you can see here I've put on a little how to sort of paint gems stage. Obviously we're going to do green gems in this video, but this sort of serves its purpose to show you know, where I place the highlights and the sort of gradient of colour as you go up each step. Always the little white dot in the top right of the gem for me. So we're going to start off by base coating the gems on the model with Lupercal green, which is just one of the new base colours. Really really dark, almost a black. Great for sort of a base coat for green gems. So because the gems on this model are actually quite small, what I've done is I've included some video from painting some of the larger gems on the other models in the Slaanesh range as part of this army I did. So you'll see some on the epitome, the piece of the terrain as well. It's easier to show them on larger gem surfaces, so it's going to jump to the Endless spell now, which is holds the little mirror. It's just got a nice big gem, so it's easier to show the layering of the green on top of it. So this is really thinned down the green, almost like a glaze. We're just going to drag it and leave the pigment towards the bottom of the gem, and it's going to dry super quick, obviously in this weather as well. So you can just build it up in really nice soft transitions. It's almost like a sort of the easier way to do gems, with just putting little thin glazes over the top of it instead of actually blending it on the surface. And then we've got the actual mirror itself here. They're going to go in with some Goblin green, and then this is obviously a moot green sort of brightness, scorpion green, if that's what people sort of remember. We're sort of dragging the brush down so it deposits the pigment towards the bottom left. You can sort of see it's building up in the bottom corner, and you can just use a bit of clean water on the brush, and then just tidy up the sort of top right part, and then again push all the pigment down into the corner. You can do this a couple of layers, build it up with the glazes. Super easy way to do gemstones. And then we're on a bit of the terrain gem here to do the final bit of yellow. I've used Soul Yellow from ScaleColour, but Flash Gets Yellow or a similar bright yellow will be fine. Again, drag it down and deposit most of the pigment towards the bottom left corner. And again, you can go in with a clean brush afterwards with just water, and then push it away from the top right so it stays darker, drag it down into the bottom left corner. So we're back to our silver now, just to reapply some nice shiny highlights to the very sort of edges of the sword and her small little claws she's got in her hand as well. Here you can sort of feather out the silver towards the end of the blade and just sort of, you know, give that really sharp point look to it. Just using the side of the brush here as well, we're going to run it along the sort of thicker part of the sword just to get that highlight in there. That's, you know, gives it that three-dimensional feel to the sword instead of it just being a flat blade. And then obviously work on the hand a little bit as well and build up some highlights there. I actually put some little tiny striations across the blade itself with just the tip of the brush, just to give it that extra little bit of sort of almost texture to the blade. So we're going to mix up a 50-50 of the Sotek green with some white here, and then just start picking out the hair. The hair has obviously got a lot of 3D sculpt in it anyway, but it doesn't hurt to paint in sort of extra lines on the sort of more flat surface areas to sort of, you know, give the sort of more, not realistic, but almost feel that there is more hair there than, you know, 4 thick molded strands. By painting in a strand in between each mold, you get, you know, more hairlines painted in. It just makes it look, you know, more full. You'd imagine her to have quite a big, bountiful amount of hair on her head anyway, so that's where you can see that I'm painting in the extra little lines with just the tip of the brush. So I'm going to add in even more white now, so it's more almost an off-white blue colour, and then I'm just going to pick out some of the more prominent sort of, you know, the big chunky hair strands running that are moulded in, and then a couple of little smaller ones, just so you've got a variation in colour of the hair. Just to, again, it doesn't really look realistic, it's a plastic, you know, hair. It looks more anime, if anything, sort of more cartoony on, you know, on these sorts of things, but putting in a mixture of, you know, colours and sort of putting in some highlights will just make it look a bit more realistic than just a plastic mould. So next we're going to build up the highlights on the claws and the teeth with some Zandri dust. I paint these in just sort of lines and try and leave some of the battlefield brown showing through towards the sort of the base of the claw. Again, lots of small little lines. Take your time here. Just build up a nice little effect. It doesn't require a lot of effort, just some, you know, some extra little lines. So even if, you know, you're not that confident with painting on sort of, it's not even freehand, it's just placing the colour on the surface. But if you're not so confident with building up, you know, something that's not actually painted detail, these sort of little things are a great way to start doing that. You know, the bottom of the claw, the sort of the tip, sorry, is going to be pure Zandri dust, and you just build up the lines, and just, you know, obviously leave the battlefield brown showing through in places. So we're going to repeat the process again, but this time using Wraithbone. Any nice smooth bone colour will do here really, but you know, the new base colour Wraithbone is really nice for this. And then again, small lines, leave the Zandri dust and the battlefield brown, or Rhinox hide if you use that showing through. And then this will add another small layer of sort of texture to the model where it's actually smooth, so it looks like there's sort of striation in the bone. Again, like I said before, really simple. Just if you're not that confident, this is a great way to you know, build up your ability to do you know, small little sort of freehand bits. Again, you're not painting anything particularly detailed, you're just doing small lines, but it's just great brush control. You know, a little practice these sort of things where you can, and put detail where there isn't any. So I want to make the tips of the claws really sharp, so I'm just going in with some white. I use P3 Morrow white as my sort of go-to white, but any nice white will do here. This is more just the outer edges and the middle line, and just I sort of glaze a little bit of white on the end of the claw. Just the white really brings it to a point and makes it look a lot sharper, because it is actually a little bit rounded the end of the claw, so this little bit of white on it just really pushes the brightness and makes it look and appear a lot sharper. So I wanted to make the ends of the claws even darker, so I'm just running some black through the airbrush on the sort of last, I don't know, 30% of the claw, just to really darken it up. And then we can go in afterwards and put a nice little highlight over this as well. Then, as mentioned before, we get a little highlight on the sort of nice plastic ridge that runs down the claw using Administratum grey, and then I actually glaze in some grey right at the end of the claw, just so it fades out to a grey instead of black right at the tip. So you can see on this claw I've kind of already done it and gone to the very final little tiny bit of glaze on the end, just to bring it to a nice grey point. You could even go again with a bit of white on the tip if you want, but grey was enough. So next up we're on to basing. So you can see the Keeper's base in the background there is actually already done, but I just wanted to show you the process of building these bases. So I'm using Yoo-hoo glue to stick the cork down. It's just some simple railway cork. I think it's only a mil, maybe 2 mil thick. I think this stuff's a mil. And then I've got some bases here, which I've actually just written the names of what goes on them, just so that I don't, you know, do too many or too few bases. And I've counted them all out. So you can see here they've obviously got their little names of what they are. There's the one for the mirror there, which is the one we're going to do here, just so you can see. So I sort of roughly place the model where it's going to go on the plastic base first, and then I grab some cork and obviously build up the layers, just so you can sort of see where the model's going to sit on the cork. Again, here we've got the Endless Spell. We're just going to put like the head bit on some cork and then leave the sort of whip bits floating above the sort of blue watery sort of thing we've got going on. So you can see here I just sort of place the cork on and then get it into a rough spot and then tear away the the bits so it's not overhanging too much on the base. What you can do is glue these pieces down first and then tear away afterwards, but I find it's just easier to sort of offer it up against the model, see what needs to come off and then tear it off. And then obviously you can see here we've got some area at the back corners which we're going to sand, just so you don't have to have cork everywhere. We're going to put in some sand for another texture on the base as well. Great for obviously filling in the holes and stuff. So just breaking away a little bit more to make it look more sort of an uneven shape. You don't want like these like uniform sort of perfect squares on the bases. Get some tearage and stuff on the cork just to space it out a little bit. And we're just going to grab our model again and make sure that it sits nicely on the cork and there's plenty of space for the whip bits at the end. And then, as I said before, we're just using the Yoo-hoo glue. This stuff I use for all my cork and a lot of the special effects sort of stuff I do with slime and goo as well. It's cheap to buy it in bulk. You can get like 3 packs of it for I think under £10 in the UK quite easily. You want to get the stuff that's not the gel stuff, just this original formula Yoo-hoo bright yellow tube. So you can see here I've gone in with 2 layers of cork on this one and put some sand mixture on and around the back edge of the bases and sort of around the top as well. Be careful when you put it on the top. You don't want to put some where you're going to put the contact points of your model. So I've got some of the Games Workshop water effect here and some of the Vallejo water effect. These are a couple of options you can use for putting down your sort of goo water effect you're going to use on the base. I just went with simple PVA. I sprayed this base just as a quick tester, just to sort of see if grey would be fine to base coat them all with, but I actually just sprayed them all black in the end because I wanted to just dry brush the grey straight over the black, just to add a bit of depth to the sort of colour of the rocks. So as mentioned before, I actually just used PVA to do the layers of goo and then sprayed the base black. I'm going to go in here with some Tamiya white and just spray the slime goo water area. So with the PVA I built up a couple of layers and let them dry, because they will shrink inwards as they evaporate and reveal some of the plastic base. PVA will sort of obviously shrink as it dries anyway, so you're going to have to do this a few times to build up a nice smooth gooey water layer, which is obviously why people like using stuff like the water effect, because it kind of just sits where it's going to go. My GW water effect bottle was actually quite old, so not really that good anymore. Here we're going to go with Mechanicus standard grey. You can see obviously on the different bases here I've already dry brushed it down, and then obviously with bits that have plastic parts already on the bottom of the model, we'll just go in and Adeptus grey those and lightly dry brush them as well so they sort of don't stick out as a connection point to the base. So we're going to use some Administratum grey and then just dry brush sort of the edges of the cork and the sand. I love basing. It's just such a nice easy thing you can do while watching TV. You don't need to focus too much on it. You can just get your big fat dry brush out and just go to town on these rocks and sand. Just nice smooth dry brush all over the edges and the sand bits, and then we'll come back in for another final dry brush later on once the blue's down as well. So next we're going to do our first water layer, which is with the model colour blue-green. There isn't really a colour match in the GW range outside of kind of Araman blue is close, but it's this blue-green as the title would suggest, is a really nice mixture of the colours, like a really good turquoise, but it's not like your normal turquoise. Kind of a hard colour to explain, really. But we'll put this all around and cover up all the white to get a nice smooth layer down. And then unfortunately I didn't record the next bit. It failed to record possibly, but I used Vallejo Dark Sea Blue to just shade round the rocks, where the rocks obviously meet the water goo slime effect. Just really nice and thin, just to give it a bit of transition, so you're not straight blue to rock. There's that bit of dark sea blue in between. You'll see it in the next picture. The recording, like I said, unfortunately didn't work. So here you can see the dark sea blue is in place, and then we're going to take some Administratum grey again, just to re-dry brush the very edges where the dark sea blue and the blue green have kind of just sort of clipped the cork a bit too much at the edge. It kind of gives it a nice sort of look that the bluey effect is kind of glowing against the rocks. So even though it's kind of a mistake, but almost like an intentional mistake, it gives you that nice glowy finish to the edge of your rocks, which looks pretty cool throughout the army, especially when you get some pigments and stuff down later on. So obviously here you can see I've gone ahead and I've glossed the water bits on. There's a couple of bases. That was the grey test base I did earlier as well. And then we used some Secret Weapons rust orange pigment just around sort of the edges of some of the cork and on the sort of sandy areas, and then just sealed that up with some isopropanol through the airbrush. You can use varnish to seal it as well. And then obviously you can see there where I'm just touching away at it, and it's not coming away because it's been sealed down. Obviously if you don't seal weathering powders over time, they will come off to touch, but when they're in like crevices and in amongst sand, it's actually quite hard to touch the dry pigment itself. So here we go, we've got the model all put together now. All the little gemstones have been painted up everywhere, which obviously were all done separately, a lot easier to get to. The robe's been placed on, the head's been placed on, and then the model has been put down to the base. Obviously on the robes there you can see I did the gold, a little bit of trim, exactly the same way I did the gold on the rest of the armour, same process. And then here we are, she's on display on my little 360 stand, so you can see sort of all angles of the model. Loved painting this model, great model, a little bit fiddly to build at the start. I mean, some of the gaps around the knee and the joins do require a little bit of love, but nothing a bit of over gluing and sanding and stuff won't sort of help you along with, or a bit of gap filling from some milliput or some green stuff or any other product like that. I've got obviously a lot of other Slaanesh videos coming up because I've done a whole army and I recorded pretty much every unit. Some of the units it didn't seem worth doing because they were so close to other units, like the Seekers and the Hellstriders are effectively just demonettes on top of fiends, which obviously have done the colours and everything for, so you can sort of put together the rest of the army from all the characters and some the other units. But I'll probably do the Shalaxi video next, which is very similar to the Keeper one, but obviously she's got some different areas that are worth touching on as well. And I had the camera set up, so it seemed good to just get that one down as well for you all to see. If there's anything you'd like to see me do in particular, then drop a comment in, hit like and subscribe on the channel. I've obviously got more content coming, but thanks for all your support.